Ready. Play.
Hello, everybody. Whatever time in the world it is where you are, I know where Pam is. It's pretty early in the morning, just gone 7:30, but you're pretty sprightly and ready for the day?
Always have been. I don't mind early mornings. It's late nights that are more difficult. I have a couple of kids. Teenagers get up and at them.
Yeah, there you go, Pam. Well, you had a few late nights recently, of course, because you've just been in Texas covering the WTA finals. How do you cope in general? I mean, New York also, which is the tournament we're going to be focusing on today. New York, you get some pretty late finishes too. How does that feel, given that you are such an early morning person?
Well, in an event like the US Open, it's literally physically and emotionally as demanding as it gets because of the hours you mentioned and how big the facility is and just how much ground you have to cover. But actually, for this WTA Tour finals, I work for the Tennis Channel, and I live in LA, and their studios are in Santa Monica. So it was a 15-minute drive. I was not in Fort Worth, even though Lindsay Davenport, as we were calling the matches, it's easy to kind of think that we were there, but we were here in Southern California. So it was great because I could come home and be with my kids after work.
Nice. So anyway, we are here to focus on matches of 2022. We're going to look at a series of 3 with you, Pam, but obviously with a particular focus on what we believe to be Serena Williams' final match of her career. Well, do we still believe that, Pam?
Yeah, I think so. I believe we've seen the last of Serena in a regular WTA tour. I mean, I hope she stays really involved with tennis. Obviously, it's hard to let it go. She said that when she first made her announcement, that she doesn't even want to have the word retirement brought into the conversation. It's about evolving. So she's kind of had some interviews about her her equity fund that's part of her business empire, and she's kind of said some things that make you believe maybe she'll come back. But I actually think 2022 US Open was the right send-off, and as it played out, I thought it was incredible 3 matches.
Yeah. What did you think going into the tournament? Did you have any fears that it might be a bit flat and she might go out early?
Oh, sure. After the way when you saw her play in Canada and then Cincinnati,
Yeah.
coupled with the Harmony 10 3 hours 11-minute loss, clearly was underdone on work and on matches. So yeah, I was concerned, which is why the Kovanic match had so many eyeballs on it, was to see whether or not she could improve enough in a couple of practice weeks, or at least it was almost 10-11 days between the loss in Cincinnati, and she was tremendous.
Yeah. I mean, if there were any concerns, there's a moment, I think, in the first point, I've just got up on the screen right now, where there's a net cord that goes against Serena. Not only does she unbelievably manage to chase it down, despite being pretty deep in her court position, but she ends up winning the point. And I think that sort of dispelled certainly 1 or 2 fears that I had in terms of how she might be able to cope. We saw her at Wimbledon go out early. We saw her throughout the North American Summer Swing. I remember her losing to Raducanu, among others. So there were some concerns, but there was a different feel, wasn't there, about her run in New York?
Well, and I think it all started, ESPN, who I work for there, we cover qualifying week, also known as Fan Week. And so we saw a lot of her practice sessions, and we had Renee Stubbs, who came on late during the summer as a consultant coach, and she was giving us some good insights about the practice sets Serena was playing in the work. And we could see it with our own eyes, because a lot of times Serena chooses that far end practice court, which is right by our outdoor ESPN set. So we could watch and eyeball in person her improvement and how hard she was working, not just on her technique and her big shots, but especially on the movement, because that's really one of the things that made her great during her prime, was how much court she could cover. And obviously, when you get in your early 40s, naturally, given the injuries and, time, it's going to change. But I thought she picked up a couple of steps between Wimbledon and the US Open.
Yeah. Yeah, she certainly seemed to be a lot sharper come the US Open. And I think those few matches, even if they did end in defeat, probably did help us. And also the Rennie Stubbs, I think that's a nice point you make. Were you in the stadium for all 3 matches, by the way?
I was watching. Unfortunately, I didn't get assigned to work any of her three matches,
Hmm.
but of course, it was like all eyes were on Serena, everybody's, including mine. And so yes, I watched all three. And the last one I watched from the courtside position.
Great.
I was semi working that one, but not with mid match commentary.
Pam, when you're working and when you're not working, when you're watching a tennis match, is it easier to sort of soak things up as a viewer when you're relaxed, if you like, you haven't got to concentrate on making notes or whatever? Is it easier and you get to sample things and see things in a different way to when you're commentating?
Well, actually, that's a great point. The answer is yes, but I would say it also depends. Like I can work all three positions that ESPN might have, which is, the play-by-play, which is the lead position that brings it in and out of
Yeah.
commercials, and then you have the analyst position. Obviously, I can do that, and then a lot of times I love that courtside position at the U.S. Open, where literally you're right behind the players' chairs. It's not the greatest angle live to see the court, but you do have a monitor and you can really see the expressions of the players and just get such a feel from being right down courtside. So that's where I watched all of the Tomljanović match.
Okay, cool. And against Kovanic as well. I mean, the first set, there was breaks galore. Maybe there was a little bit of rustiness, but in the end, she won that in straight sets. On court afterwards, she was getting quite emotional. I think there were certain celebrities in the crowd throughout her run. People maybe starting to dream already, but it probably wasn't until the second round when she plays, obviously, the number 2 in the world, Kontaveit, when I think momentum was beginning. Am I getting carried away, or were you getting
No,
carried away at this point?
actually, no. It was. I would say the Kontaveit match was huge, and just kind of like eyeballing, and we knew that Kontaveit. Look, the number 2 ranking or 2 players. It's been a very challenging time for that part of the ranking group, especially the number 2 ranking in the last 12 months has just been like a ping pong ball amongst 3, 4, or 5 players. And so Kontaveit, we all knew, while she had that amazing run in the fall of 2021, where she won all those tournaments to qualify for the year-end championships. She got to the finals of the year-end in Guadalajara last year. That she was not the same player. She'd suffered from long COVID a bit. So
Hmm.
everybody, I felt like it was a really good opportunity going into that match for Serena to pull off an upset that would be really memorable, because in your last tournament to beat, someone, the number 2 seed, would be fantastic.
Yeah, right. Also, of course, there were net cords that maybe would go Serena's way, and sometimes they wouldn't, and so on and so forth. There would be unforced errors from her opponent on occasions throughout all 3 matches. It must have been tough for the 3 players that she played against to handle that, right?
Well, I think part of it's tough always when the crowd is so against you. Usually that's not ideal. But I think all 3 opponents really felt they had an honor. It was a
Yeah.
privilege and an honor to play Serena in her last tournament. And I felt like all 3 handled it before and after, and they spoke with really great articulation about what it meant to them to be able to play Serena. Because let's face it, so many of the young top players have not had that opportunity because she's been injured so much. She had the maternity leave. She just hasn't been out there playing that much in the last 5 years.
Do you think there was something as well in those first 2 matches about the return of serve? There seemed to be an extra kilometer or 2 an hour, especially on the backhand side. We just got a frozen shot here against Kovanic. But when I was watching the highlights of the 3 matches today, every time I was just sort of watching Serena, and she was just crunching backhand returns and also quite a few swing volleys as well. And there was an unerring accuracy and a timing that to me seemed to be much better at the US Open than at Wimbledon. I remember at Wimbledon when she lost in the first round to Tan, and there was a couple of swing volleys that went wide, and there was the timing was getting much better as the matches went on.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
So yeah, so I do think the power on the returns was something that was really important, and I feel like part of the overall tactics was for Serena to not have to rely on playing defense. Right? It was to step up into the court and play first strike tennis and try and eliminate having to play defense as much, and also shorten the points. So I felt like she did the tactics right. She gave herself the best chance, given how few matches she'd played over the previous 14 months. And given, obviously she was underdone, but in the meantime, she was getting better and better with each match she played.
There were a number of celebrities in the crowd. The TV loved to pan to them at various points, as I'm sure you can imagine, and maybe you became aware. I mean, Dionne Warwick here was there for the Kontaveit match, and I know Tiger Woods and various others were there. Have you ever had any celebrities watching you play? And is it distracting, or can you remember anything like this?
Well, I guess the closest thing I could say to having celebrities would have been things like my very first Wimbledon match. I had like 15 relatives surrounding court 5 at Wimbledon. So you become aware of people in your family and people but I've had nothing like what Serena had. Actually, one time I was playing a match in Washington, D.C., just a regular tour event, and he was then Vice President Bush. It was before the first President Bush became president. He came out to watch me play because that family loved tennis. So I guess that's the closest thing I could remember.
When you've got your family, then do you look up to them as well? Like, so you've got 15 people in your family that are there traveling to London. I think it was, you said Wimbledon, right? So does it add pressure? Does it release pressure? I mean, how does it feel? Do you get distracted by it?
No, I don't think you get distracted. You certainly have a knowledge they're there, but then when it's match time, it's like it's your job to kind of just be focused on how to play the points, and everything outside the court kind of is a blur. I thought Serena did a great job of that. I do feel like a couple of major finals she played after maternity leave, like at Wimbledon one year, maybe at a US Open final, there was almost too many celebrities around but obviously a finals of a major, you get them anyway. But I felt like this time it had the right balance. I mean, obviously people wanted to give her the respected send off. I thought it was great. Tiger Woods came up. I think he brought one of his kids with him. So I thought it was beautiful. Even later on in the tournament, after Serena had gone out to see Michelle Obama, in that case, she was really cheering on Frances Tiafoe. So this year's US Open, because of Serena and her run, I think it really crossed over outside tennis pages, outside the sports pages, and it really drew in a lot of people.
It did. And of course, it was drawing more and more people as the run went on. She won the first set against Kontaveit in the second round. I believe she's now 103 in matches at the US Open when she wins the first set, which is another incredible stat. It wasn't all plain sailing. There was a fight back from Kontaveit in the second set. But again, Serena managed to step up. And tell me about the atmosphere during those 3 matches. I mean, do you think it helped Serena in the first 2 matches?
Oh, I think Serena was definitely helped by the crowd. Listen, and this is a complicated stadium for Serena. I mean, she's had, through her career, 2 or 3 of the most difficult, controversial, upsetting things happened to her. Whether it was the 2009 semis against Clijsters or the 2018 finals against Osaka. I felt like part of what this year's US Open was about was sort of like burying those moments and replacing them with this great crowd support, and just everybody was just appreciative to be able to watch the all-time great Serena Williams at one more major.
Yeah. And she did eventually pull through against Kontaveit and beating Kontaveit. I mean, I know you said that it was a bit of a passing the buck in terms of the world number 2, etc. And various people have held that honor this year. And Kontaveit was didn't make the WTA finals that I know you were just recently in attendance for. But still, that is a huge feather in her cap as she goes into the third round. I've mentioned here that there was some more trademark backhand returns and swing volleys on offer. So going again into that match against Tomljanović, did you make Serena the favorite?
I actually think I did probably pick her to win. I thought that based on the quality against Kovanic, the improvement 2 days later, but I did have a concern, which was the night before Serena and Venus played a primetime doubles match. That I was actually on the call for, and it was a long straight set match, but what it meant was that Serena played Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and now she's due to play Tomljanović Friday night. And of course, all of the energy, all of the hype. It did kind of like occur to me, is this a lot of tennis for, 5-day period when you haven't been playing a lot? But I thought based on skill and how she looked that I picked her as the slight favorite. But I didn't realize that Tomljanović would go out and play under that pressure and that crowd. I thought Tomljanović played one of the great matches of her career.
I think so. I mean, I actually made it in my notes that it's the match of her life, albeit I haven't seen every match of Tomljanovic's career. And in fact, Tomljanović has said today, actually, in an interview on TV, I think I saw, actually it was on the tennis podcast, sorry, that she just felt a bit more relaxed this year about certain things, and she felt as though she felt freer and she felt as though she could play her best tennis. And on this particular day, unfortunately for Serena, she certainly did play her best tennis, not reading the script, managing to squeeze out that first set. It was nip and tuck. But before we know it, Serena has raced into a 4-love lead and threatening to go to 5-love in the second set. It's all looking plain sailing at this point, right?
Well, and even the first set, I mean, Serena had chances to win the first set. And then from that position that you just mentioned, the second set way up, things got really complicated, which was a concern to me. Again, I mentioned the doubles the night before, how much she played. I thought the fact that she didn't wrap up the first set, and then from that 4-love lead, the set got so tight and tense. So it added like another half hour of effort to win that set when it maybe could have been a 6-1, 6-2 set. So I did question, and that's why the one thing I did during the telecast is I asked Renee Stubbs, like, does this one question was like, does Serena have it in her physically to, play this third set well? And she said, well, I hope so. And I think as it turns out, it was a combination of Serena was flat and tired, was just a little tired. And then Tomljanović just had that tunnel vision, and she was amazing to withstand the crowd noise and all the excitement.
I mean, from 4-love at this point that we can see on the screen, from 4-love, and I think she actually wins this point with an ace, so it actually becomes 4-love and 40-30 for a game point 5-love lead. From this point, I mean, Serena, I think she loses 4 or 5 games in a row. She also loses a lot of the early games. She loses 5 of the first 6 games at the second set, so that's a huge chunk of games to lose. I was actually just mega impressed that she managed to win the tiebreak, because she was also up in that, and that lead slipped as well.
Yeah, no, it was quite the set of tennis. That was when I think the crowd was at its loudest, was at the end of that second set, except for the last game of the entire match, which was, raise the roof, even though the roof was open. It was quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean, how she managed to regain her composure. I mean, have you ever felt like that in a match where you've had a pretty good lead? I don't know if you were up a set in a break, or even a couple of breaks in a particular set, and then it slipped away from you. And have you managed to regain it? How difficult is it to regain that momentum?
Oh, listen, I mean, in the 19 years I played, I saw something of everything, right? You see leads that you are facing or that you have that you let slide, and then where, gosh darn it, I'm sorry, I got a little tech issue with my phone. I'm sorry.
We're not on Twitter Spaces now.
I know. So anyway, you see a little bit of everything, and I thought for Serena, she sort of had a little bit of everything that represented her 25 years of playing the tour in that final match. The determination, the excitement for the crowd, the big serving at times, the drama. I mean, it was all right there.
Yeah, it certainly was. And so we go into the final game of the match. I mean, as I said, Tomljanović, just playing some of the best tennis of her career, races into a 5-1 lead. And it's still been a great match. We're thinking, okay, this has still been an incredible run. If it is to end 6-1 at this point, no shame in that. Serena, fortunately, didn't, we talked about going into the tournament. We were worried about it being a bit of a flat ending for her. It was anything but that. I almost think going into this final game, I was thinking to myself, well, in a way, painfully losing the final or semi-final could even be a worse way to end the career than than a third round sort of dramatic run that doesn't quite make it. And that's what I was thinking going into this final game. I remember the match points that Tomljanović had, which was it 6? Did she have?
I think it was about that. It was a lot.
Yeah. There was about 8 or 9 juices as well, because Williams also had a few break points. So it was about 20 minutes long. But I think even that, despite as crazy as it sounds, doesn't tell the full story of that final game. I mean, what are your memories of that final game, of what may well be the final game of Serena's career?
Yeah, I think the memories that stand out the most are the match points where Serena just refused to lose. And
Yeah.
she'd just come up with big shot after big shot, mostly on the returns, and
Yeah.
just the determination on her face. I feel like a couple of times, the crowd then was just beside themselves as she saved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 match points. Had some opportunities, as you said, to get the break back. It was just those games, that last for 20 or so minutes, that have opportunities on both sides, has great play. They're in every major, but to have it, that kind of a game, be the last game of Serena's career at the US Open, was just made it even more memorable. Because listen, everybody pretty much loses the last game they play, unless you're Pete Sampras.
Unless you're Pete Sampras, yeah.
Yeah. So, but she put her stubborn determination, her great skill, her power, it was all on display as she was fighting, hanging on, and trying to, get to 5-2.
Do you think she felt a bit more relaxed in that last game than maybe she'd felt at various other points in her career? I mean, you mentioned some painful moments she had at the US Open, but it did feel as though she was swinging the ball and thinking, you know what, I'm just going to hit this thing. And there were so many returns of serve that were just sensational winners that reminded us of yesteryear. Do you think she did sort of think, what the hell, for that last game?
Yeah, what the hell? I think that was exactly what was going. What the hell? I'm going to go out swinging. I'm Serena Williams. I'm not going to go out like in my shell, being defensive. I'm going to go out like doing what I do. And again, on the other side of the net, I thought Tomljanović, it took 2 to make such a memorable game. And Tomljanović's role to just be able to hear the crowd, going in a frenzy for Serena, and be able to stay on track to be able to close it out in that game. Both sides were memorable, but obviously Serena especially.
Where do these matches, and probably mostly the last match against Tomljanović, where do they rank in terms of tennis atmospheres you've experienced, both as a player, commentator, and fan?
Yeah, I think that last game, and in a lot of the scenes that Serena felt on Arthur Ashe Stadium, so she always played first match of the evening session, and all 4 of her matches that week, it was great atmosphere each and every time. There was so much anticipation, so much support for Serena. Like, it was a salute and a send-off that was, in many ways, just right for somebody that had accomplished all that she'd accomplished.
I mean, we all would have loved it to have ended in a fairy tale victory, but having said that, I think, aside from that, anyway, I think this is about as good as it gets. But just because I think if she'd have kept going, I think there would have been an element of disappointment. But I think it was just far enough away from the real dreamy end of the tournament to make it so exciting. I mean, just saving one match point after another, with one crushing return after another, with swing volleys. And I did start to redream, though, at the break points, thinking, you never know. She gets one of these breaks back. There had been so many breaks of serve throughout her 3 matches. I mean, I think Serena started to serve much better as each match went on, but still she was a bit vulnerable on her serve. But she was able to just break serve almost at will as well. So were you dreaming a little bit at some of those break points? Or were you just thinking the energy?
The one thing I do know is that a tennis match is not over until the 2 competitors are shaking hands. And I just felt sitting there for the 20 minutes of the last game, like, well, it would have been perfect to have such a memorable last game, but also if she'd broken, to have it continue and just keep pushing Tomljanović, just to see whether or not there would be a little bit of a crack on her side. Of course, we never know, because Tomljanović was able to hang on to that last game. But, also some of the Serena is sort of known for her trademark. She'll hit a winner and just let out that loud, like, exclamation point with her voice. And it had all of that.
You did. Have you managed to speak to Renee Stubbs? Did you speak to her in the aftermath of the match or in the following days?
Yeah, well, we were working together on the same ESPN team, so
Mhm.
yes, we did. And I think Renee was really pleased at Serena's work and the work she put in the lead up, and that she did get better with each match. So I think from Renee's standpoint, it was all good, given how little Serena had played, and really the quality that Serena showed at the Open. While tons of fight, like she didn't let go of that Harmony Tan match, but she just didn't have, the tools or the work
Yeah.
invested in order to be able to win there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we said that we don't think we're going to see her again on a court. The only thing is, it is still a little bit of a doubt and a little bit sad because she was playing so well. But then I guess we all, when you were finishing your career, Pam, did you make the announcement? Did you tell everybody weeks in advance, months in advance? Was there? How was it for you?
Well, first off, I mean, totally different level and situation. I mean, the sport of tennis, really, you always want the greatest champions, whether it's Federer, like he had his own special send off, Nadal, Djokovic. I hope Venus gets one if she wants
Yeah.
one. But, mine was much more low key. I ended up just announcing at a small tournament in Oklahoma City that my dear friend was the tournament. My friend was the tournament director of the small tournament, but she also was the tournament director of the first tournament I was
Okay.
able to play in when I was 15, and that was 19 years. So that was my full circle, was
Nice.
to go out at a tournament that my dear friend was owning and promoting.
Oh, that's a nice way to end anyway, albeit in a slightly not quite so grandiose circumstances as Serena. I hope you don't mind me saying. But listen, if it is the last time we've seen Serena on a tennis court, at least in a professional sense, I still think she provided us with one final lengthy series of amazing memories. I mean, is that what you'll take away from that tournament and those three matches?
Yeah, we were able to just be pulled in by her, not just her game, but her story and her enthusiasm to compete. And on ESPN, I mean, we had the best ratings we had. I think the last match was the highest rated TV match, tennis match ever on ESPN. And ESPN's been doing tennis since 1979 through a lot of great champions. So it had it all. It had it
Yeah.
all. And I guess it was a bit much to think that she could go 7 matches, but I had that little bit of a thought.
I'm sure she did too, as well, Pam. Listen, it's been great having you on board for this sort of. Hopefully, you can now enjoy the off season. Have you got any sort of more media commitments between now and on Australia?
Well, I'm actually working for Tennis Channel starting tomorrow morning early for 3 days
Oh,
for the Billie Jean King Cup. But
okay.
again, it's here in Santa Monica. I just have to get up really early for Glasgow time.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, you've got to get used to our European times now. That's true. Well, listen, have fun with that, Pam, and I'm sure we'll cross paths again in the next few months. And it was great having you on board. And listen, if we don't see Serena again, it was great.
It sure was. I'll remember it forever. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Pam. Bye.